Microsoft was playing catch up. It was very important for us to quickly gain prominence in the market. And Hotmail, even though it was relatively small in terms of number of users, they were around 8 million users. They were growing very fast. They were adding a million users a month. And email is a very sticky application. We felt time to market was very, very important since we were late in the game and that we could ride the Hotmail acquisitions, get a lot of users to our portal. Their inclination would have been to treat iPhone as a fad. Who in the right minds would want to type on a screen as opposed to a real keyboard? And battery life was very poor. I suspect that they poo-pooed the iPhone entrance in the market to their ultimate demise. So it's a very short-sighted move on part of the administration. Nobody's going to pay $180,000 for an H-1B visa unless that person is a Stanford, MIT PhD or something. Ultimately, those people will go and build companies, great companies in their respective native countries, not in the United States. And those were crazy times. I raised $15 million. Unfortunately, a lot of the other companies that were raising that kind of money would burn through that in a year, hiring lots of people, renting fancy office space. We were actually very prudent. We didn't hire a lot of people. When it came time to pivot, we still had a fair amount of money left, and it allowed us to take our existing technology, repurpose it, offer our product to consumers. I've been fascinated with marketplaces for a long time because it's a winner take. If you can get through the chicken or egg problem, then it's a flywheel that keeps spinning faster and faster.
My name is Urian Mittelman. Welcome to the third episode of the UWB Startup Club podcast. Today, I'm with my co-host, Srinidhi.
Hi, my name is Srinidhi Raghavendra. Our guest today is a pre-dot-com crash Microsoft alumni, serial founder, and an author. Welcome, Shirish Nadkarni.
Welcome to the show, yeah.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Awesome. I want to start with your time at Microsoft. You were there for like 12 years, and when it was a relatively small company, um, what was the most important thing that you learned there? I know there's a lot of time, but if you can sort of centralize on a single thing.
Yeah, it was a great time to be at Microsoft. I was in product management, and you got to work on completely new technologies that didn't exist before. So when I joined Microsoft, I was the product manager for Microsoft Email, which didn't exist on the PC platform before. Very few companies, in fact, used email at that time. So what was exciting was the opportunity to go, create a new industry, define the product and the experience, and then compete with other players in the market. And I'd say the main thing I learned at Microsoft was strategic thinking. How to shape a industry, how to launch products, how to respond to competitive moves. All of those things required strong strategic thinking, and I learned that at Microsoft.
Do you think the fact that Microsoft had a very good culture of anyone can come up with any idea they want. It doesn't, your seniority, your role doesn't really matter. Did that sort of play into it, the fact that anyone could sort of speak up and contribute to that strategy?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, we had very smart people at Microsoft, and it was definitely a culture that encouraged people to speak their minds and give their opinions and all that. And if you had an important thing to say, and it didn't matter what your rank was or where you were in the hierarchy and so forth, but you had to be able to present your idea and carry forward your logic and get people on your side, etc. That was no small feat. Um, so you had to be pretty smart and good at presenting your ideas.
And you talked about how you were uh, managing and planning the Microsoft's internal email, right?
Not internal, external. So
External.
external. So at that time it was called Microsoft Mail, and it was used by small work groups in corporations that were using PCs or Macs and were connected via a local area network, and then they could use it to send email to each other.
Okay.
And Srinidhi, I think, has a question about
Yeah.
how that connects to Hotmail. Do you want to ask it?
So like during the Hotmail acquisition, like the internal team like estimated Microsoft could like build a competing email product in 9 months. But you recognize that once a real decision cycle came factored in, like the company would be nearly 2 years behind the market. And this realization ultimately led you to push for the 400 million, I think,
Yeah.
Hotmail acquisition, and
Yes.
that shaped the entire build versus buy philosophy. What experience in that moment made the importance of time to market absolutely undeniable for you after like the last previous uh, acquisition attempt by Microsoft?
Yeah. So, Microsoft was late to the internet. There were many other players ahead of us. Yahoo, you're familiar with Yahoo, of course. There were other players like which you may not be familiar with, like Excite and Lycos and so forth. And Microsoft was playing catch up. So it was very important for us to quickly gain prominence in the market. And Hotmail, even though it was relatively small in terms of number of users, they were around, when I first spoke to them, they were around 8 million users. They were growing very fast. They were adding a million users a month. And email is a very sticky application. It's an application that people use multiple times a day. And so we felt that by acquiring Hotmail, it would not only provide a valuable function for our users, but also we could grow rapidly through Hotmail's growth. And we felt that Hotmail could grow into hundreds of millions of users because they were first to market and had a good product and so forth. So, uh, and compared to that, if we pass this opportunity, you know, it would take us several months to make a decision on what to do and, put together a team, and then that would take them a year to build it. Plus, Hotmail had a lot of experience in scaling their system. And Microsoft didn't quite have that. Microsoft was building products for enterprises, thousands of users, whereas Hotmail was building a service for tens of millions of users. And that's a difference in engineering excellence that we just didn't have. Not that we couldn't build it, but it would take time to learn and build it and so forth. So we felt time to market was very, very important since we were late in the game, and that we could ride the Hotmail acquisitions. They were acquiring lot of users. We could ride that and get a lot of users to our portal.
So a follow-up question. So like what was the math behind the $400 million? Because I know the Microsoft told that we will acquire Hotmail for 170 million, right?
Mhm.
And then Hotmail said like $750 million
Yeah.
in return. But how did you come with the math, and what was the agreeing, like how did you convince Hotmail to come down to 450?
Yeah, I mean, those were crazy times during the dot-com boom. You
Hmm.
know, the Hotmail VCs, those who funded Hotmail, were not interested in selling Hotmail to Microsoft. They thought they could have a much bigger IPO. And so, it ultimately came down to negotiations. We said 750 was crazy number. We proposed initially 300 million plus another, 150 million or whatever, post the acquisition based on meeting certain metrics, and then ultimately decided to scrap that idea because it was complicated and settled on a 400 million number.
Okay.
Yeah.
And like in this current world, AI has grown tremendously.
Mhm.
So in what parts of the process like will AI now optimize in that time to market sales strategy? Like how will the acquisitions now, how will it change?
So you're asking if you were to acquire a Hotmail today, How would
Yeah.
AI?
No, like just not just Hotmail, like acquiring any other company, like how will it work now since AI has been introduced and it has
Yeah.
grown tremendously? How will AI help or optimize the acquisition process? Or like how can you figure out this is the right time to sell or buy?
Well, AI doesn't really factor into the decision on when's the right time to buy or sell. It's based on your strategy. If you want to go after a certain market, and there are existing players in the market, you might decide, like we did with Hotmail, that it's better to buy versus build. Now, what AI can do is help the build strategy, meaning, now AI can do a lot of the coding work for you. I'm skeptical of how much it can really help. People claim some outrageous numbers, but I think at most 20% or so. Of course, that'll change over time. So over time, you could see that companies could say, "Hey, AI can help me build this in 6 months, and that's fast enough for me to enter the market." But there are other considerations also. If the other player has an existing installed base that's valuable, then it doesn't. The buy argument becomes much stronger.
Okay. Yeah, I think Uri has some questions also about
Yeah.
your Microsoft era.
So in terms of the build versus buy, do you think it will like AI? Do you think AI will bias them towards internal building? Because even if it might not be true, even if there might be some tech debt that AI introduces, do you think there will be, at least initially right now, a bias towards internal building where there's competition in user base still?
Yeah, again, it all depends on what assets does the target company bring. If they bring a large install base, they have a strong brand, they have lots of partners, they have lock-in with the customers, so it's difficult to displace them even if you build your own product. All those things come into consideration. And but AI can certainly help the buy argument and reduce your time to market. And over time, as I said, AI will do a lot more coding for you, and so that argument will become much stronger.
In in terms of like first mover advantage, I think the story of like AI, like broad just AI chat, with Gemini and ChatGPT, Gemini kind of represents the long term, the long shot that's sort of just been churning along the way, getting users, but providing a really good product. While ChatGPT kind of led the was flagship initially and has slowly been chipped away at, but they were first mover. I was
Yeah.
wondering what are your thoughts on that sort of balance there between first mover and just huge tech giants that are chipping away at each other?
Yeah, I mean, first more advantage is certainly very important, and despite advances made by Gemini and Claude and from Anthropic, they still remain the leader, but they have to continue to invest in Chat GPT to remain in the forefront. We are still early in the AI game, and there will be more breakthroughs, and we don't know where those breakthroughs are going to come from. And the market dynamic could change very rapidly. I mean, if you look at the search space back in the dot com and post dot com era, you had the early search players were Yahoo and Lycos and Excite and so forth, and then they chose not to invest in search, and they invested in building a portal, whereas Google just focused on a search engine and had a very simple interface with a command line, not a command line, but in a box where you could type in your search, and they did they had a proprietary algorithm to display really great search results. And that changed the dynamic of the market. And Google became the leading player over time. And they have continued to invest in search and remain the leader. But every so often, there's some change in the technology that can change the dynamic. I mean, a lot of people are now using chatbots, AI chatbots for search.
Mhm.
That's taken away from Google search. A lot of people use Amazon for product search, and that's gone from Google, etc. So you have to be very vigilant about market changes, technology changes to remain at the forefront. Otherwise, you can easily lose your dominance. So it's not guaranteed that first mover advantage will stay or stick over time.
Mhm. I want to talk about your inspiration for team on systems.
Mhm.
What inspired you to go on your own and do that without big corporate backing?
Yeah. So before starting Team on Systems, as we discussed, I did the Hotmail acquisition, and I was really inspired by what they had done in creating a simple web-based email solution that you could access from anywhere and etc. So my idea was to take that concept, but apply it to the corporate world, which at that time, if you were a small company, you had to buy the software from Microsoft or Lotus. You had to, buy servers. You had to install the software on your servers, and then you had to have system administrators to manage it and so forth. So I said, why do all of that? Why not provide a service in the cloud that had certain corporate email features, so including calendaring and scheduling and group scheduling, etc. But provide that as a service. In fact, at that time, we were one of the first um, service providers of any kind of corporate application. Um, and so that's how the original concept for Team on Systems came out. And then we pivoted to, we saw the emergence of mobile, and we saw a better opportunity there and pivoted to mobile and got significant traction, got finally acquired by BlackBerry.
Yeah, so it was really interesting that in the time of the dot-com crash, you were able to pivot and be like light on your feet and survive. And I was wondering if you can go a little bit more into that and explain how that went.
Yeah, so again, those were crazy times. I raised $15 million for a product that had not gone to market yet. Even by today's standards, that's a lot of money. Um, Unfortunately, a lot of the other companies that were raising, that kind of money would burn through that in a year, hiring lots of people, renting fancy office space, etc. We were actually very prudent. We didn't hire a lot of people. We're a small team, and we, focus our energies on building the product and marketing and so forth. And when it came time to pivot, we still had a fair amount of money left, and it allowed us to take our existing technology, repurpose it for mobile usage, and then start going after wireless carriers to offer our product to consumers. So we were so the key thing was being very prudent in how you spent money, and also understanding the market dynamics as to where things were moving and where the best opportunities lay.
You talked initially about, or for the first, before the pivot for Team On Systems, how you kind of, it was a couple of things that were sort of each tied into each other that were problematic with the idea. Firstly, that you kind of were too early for the market,
Yeah.
that while cloud it was incredibly innovative, that like people didn't yet trust this black
Yeah.
box. They didn't know what exactly it meant. How do I know I can trust whatever the cloud is, right? And then also you talked about how it's blank slipping my mind right now. Oh yes, how customer this sort of ties into each other, but how you needed to do more customer interviews to see that if this was a thing that people even really wanted. Um, and my question regarding this was when you pivoted, how did you take what you learned and like quickly use that in the pivot? Did you do customer interviews immediately, stuff like that?
No, we didn't do any uh, customer interviews, but we saw the early success of BlackBerry at that time, though they had their own proprietary device. And we saw that wireless carriers, who would be our distribution partner, were very interested in offering email on their data-enabled phones. So at that time, um, the this was around the 2000 2001 timeframe. Cell phones, which were only a voice device before, started offering data access or internet access at very low speeds, very low speeds. But still, you could do simple web-based applications on the phone. And so we felt that there would be very strong interest for wireless carriers to offer people the ability to access email on the go, which was becoming more important. And there was proof in the market that BlackBerry had shown very strong interest in that kind of a product. So we didn't really have to do any customer interviews. It was really understanding the market trends.
That makes
Yeah,
sense.
you talked about like how BlackBerry wanted to acquire Teamon Systems, right?
Yes.
Like, how do you know that was the right time to, uh, you know, do the acquisition? I mean, sell your company to BlackBerry. Like, how did you come to the exit criteria?
Yeah. So at that time, we were in the process of raising our second round. Um, and we did get a term sheet for a second round from our existing investors, but they were at very onerous terms. Very few companies were successful in raising subsequent rounds at that time, and the valuations had dropped dramatically. Um, so we felt that an acquisition of BlackBerry would be uh, a better option for us in terms of financial outcome for the employees, as well as being able to take our technology and offer it to millions of BlackBerry users across the world. And so it was exciting to be able to leverage BlackBerry's distribution partnerships with wireless carriers around the world and offer this technology.
Uh, yeah, after like the iPhone came out, I think it was in 2007, with the new technology of like the touchscreen. What did the leaders like? What did the exec team of BlackBerry think? Do they think it was just going to be like a fad? It's going to go away within like a month, or do they think, oh, it's going to be a iPhone is going to be a competitor to BlackBerry's phones?
I had actually already left BlackBerry at that time,
Mm-hmm.
but knowing the founders, I think their inclination would have been to treat iPhone as a fad, and that uh, who in the right minds would want to type on a screen as opposed to a real keyboard, and battery life was very poor for iPhone and so forth. And so I suspect that they poo-pooed the iPhone entrance in the market to their ultimate demise.
Yeah, so like what was the one thing that you think that Apple did really well of keeping iPhone this long? Because the iPhone has survived for about almost a decade now, but BlackBerry like there's not that many BlackBerry phones in the market as of now. So what do you think? What was the pivot of like iPhones? Like what was the marketing strategy of iPhones? What do you think they did really well, better than BlackBerry?
Yeah. So first of all, they introduced a new mechanism, the touch screen to navigate the device, which was very powerful. And they provided a good email solution, not exactly as good as BlackBerry, but good enough. And they provided a fantastic web browser, which at that time was really usable only on a Wi-Fi connection. At that time the wireless data speeds were pretty slow, um, but it was a matter of time before they became faster. And so as BlackBerry, when you evaluate competitors, you don't look at them just at that time. You kind of envision how technology will evolve over time, and how those deficiencies can go away. And over time, they were able to improve the battery life. The wireless speeds improved. They made they had a good camera on the phone, etc. All these things made, and then they had a app ecosystem. All of those things made iPhone very attractive.
Like, do you think it was a real competitor, like the iPhone? Did you think it was a real competitor at that time? Like, in your eyes, if you're creating another startup company, did you think that was related to like a phone making company? Do you think that was an like actual competitor in that time?
Yeah, I personally thought that iPhone looked um, very promising at that time. And I personally switched to using an iPhone primarily because of the app ecosystem. I found a lot of apps that were very useful, and that ultimately made the decision for me to switch. Um, yeah, and lot millions of people did that as well.
So I want to talk about Livemocha. Um, Livemocha, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was a global marketplace for language learners to learn from the people that are actually native to that country. Is that right?
Yes, that was part of the solution. There's also uh, lessons. So you could go through lessons to learn the language, and then um, at the end of each lesson were exercises, which could be uh, forwarded to native speakers who review your answers, give you feedback, etc. So it was a language learning solution with a global network of native speakers.
Mhm. I was wondering, what I hear about marketplaces is that you have to balance um, the different sides of it. And I was
Yeah,
wondering if you ever had issues scaling the buy, like in most marketplaces it's buy versus seller, but in your marketplace it would be learner versus like tutor. If you
yeah,
ever had issues scaling those proportions as you scale.
yeah. Actually, in our case, the users were themselves learners and tutors.
Mhm.
So if I'm learning Spanish, I'm an English speaker learning Spanish. I'm a learner of Spanish, but then I can help somebody in China learn English, right? So as we grew the number of users in our system, we made sure that we acquired users not just in the United States, but also in countries outside the United States. In fact, Brazil, China, India, etc., were ahead of the United States in terms of number of users.
So
Uh,
oh sorry, did you?
go ahead, go ahead.
I was just wondering then, so every user, uh, you wouldn't have this sort of chicken egg problem where there's scaling between the different sides of the market. Everyone in the market could have been both sides of the.
Yes,
Okay. That's fine.
exactly. But to do that, we had to acquire users all over the world,
Mhm.
which we did. Yeah.
So
So what did you learn from your first startup that you kind of used in this one that made it successful too? Like because the ratio of successful startup, I think, correct me if I'm wrong too. I think it's like 1 to 3 startups, right?
Mhm.
So what strategy or what did you learn from the first startup that you use in this one to make it successful too? That I think it was a big company that acquired it was Rosetta Stone that
Yeah,
acquired Livemocha, right? So
yeah,
what
yeah.
strategy did you use in this startup, Livemocha?
I mean, there are two different times and two different um, methods of um, customer acquisition. Um, so when uh, I did Team On Systems, we didn't really have SEO or SEM at that time. So you couldn't build your user base using those strategies. Whereas with Live Mocha, Google, by 2008, 2007, 2008 timeframe when we launched, SEO and SEM were popular strategies for acquiring users, and that's how we acquired users in other countries. We would put a small amount of marketing budget towards paid acquisition, and that would kind of create the Kindle, and then the word of mouth spread from there, and we didn't have to continue to spend a lot of money on marketing. But those strategies were very important in terms of acquiring users for Limoca, which we didn't have for team on systems.
Okay, like I have another question, like related to that. So, like you said, like one strategy was like how one user helped other users, right? So how is like should most founders rely on word of mouth today? And like what customer acquisition strategies are the most reliable in in Live Mocha? Like how did you use that in Live Mocha?
Yeah, I mean, as I said, um, we did a number of things to acquire users. There was a big launch event um, through a company called Demo, which was at that time very popular way to for startups to launch and get visibility to the press, and also we got some good press early on, and then through that somebody in New York Times, writer in New York Times, found out about us and wrote about us, a pretty major article about us, and that just exploded the growth for us. Uh, a lot of blogs being written about us, and that we were kind of very unique, offering at that point. And so a lot of people were writing about us. And as I said, we then used SEO, SEM to then go into different countries and acquire users. And then, the word of mouth really kicked in, and we grew. First 3 months we added 100,000 users. First 12 months 1 million, and then it grew to 15 million.
Well, like, what would you recommend for founders today? Like, what are some of your recommendations that you give, like advices to founders today?
Yeah, so there are two things that I focus on. One is achieving what I call product market fit. Really making sure that your product addresses a core problem that's very important to the end user. It has to be a top three problem in there, unless of course it's an entertainment app or something. So it has to be a very important problem for them, and that your solution uniquely addresses their core problem. It may lack some of the features that existing players in the market might be having, but it addresses some core, feature that it just blows people's minds away. So achieving product market fit is very important. Number one. Number two is focusing on retention. In my book, I talk about retention cohorts. We track cohorts of users over a period of time and see how they remain with your system. And you want to get to like, 40-50% retention over time to be a really major application, because retention drives more users, because the more people use your app on a daily, weekly basis, the more likely they are to tell other people about it. And so it's important not only to maintain your user base, but also bring new users into the system. And then finally, being very clear about the marketing strategy that allows you to acquire customers inexpensively, ideally through word of mouth and so forth.
In in that sort of same light, in customer acquisition, you talked about SEO, but that sort of has tapered off in recent years. And what I've been hearing recently is using sort of like AI seeding. I don't know the exact term, but sort of just releasing a lot of content so that whenever someone asks, "Oh, where do I go to use tool XYZ?" they show your product. And people talk about releasing PR statements so that AI gets seeded with that data. And whenever it does the quick scrape, the quick search, it looks at your thing. I was wondering if you think, what do you think about those specific strategies? If you know any others that you recommend, and if SEO is still a sustainable strategy today?
Yeah. So certainly, with emergence of chatbots and people using that instead of search, um, it is important to optimize your content for AI chatbots and so forth, so that you can appear in the results from chat, from OpenAI or Gemini, etc. So that's the new kind of mantra that a lot of startups are now focusing on. Um, and But traditional SEO is still very important, especially if you have new content that is not available from existing players. Otherwise, SEO is very hard to break into. It's very hard to get into the first page, second page of the search engine, because the existing players have already captured that space.
Yeah.
But if you're a new player, etc., then certainly you do have SEO opportunities.
Continue on the same note. What do you think about UGC for marketing and customer acquisition, user generated content?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that was very important for us at Livemocha. We started with um, 6 languages that we um, created the content ourselves. But then we built an engine whereby our users could contribute towards creating content for other languages. And so we ended up with 30 different languages over time. So UGC was very, very important for us in terms of um, offering, learning, languages in obscure countries, etc. So it depends on the what you're doing, but certainly we kind of explore it to the hilt.
Yeah. So in for Live Mocha, and actually just broadly across any startup that you did, actually, I guess it most sort of pertains to team on, but it's a question about timing, how timing influences startups. Um, I was talking to TM McCann on the last episode, and his first idea, Help Share, was it unfortunately got it was horrible timing with the dot-com bubble crash. No one was really looking to do funding, and for you for team on systems, people weren't initially, you sort of were ahead of your time. People weren't comfortable with cloud yet,
Yeah,
and then also for Live Mocha, you said it was kind of hard to raise funding because of the
the
bubble,
financial crisis.
yeah, the housing bubble, yeah. So I
Yeah,
was wondering how much of a factor timing in a startup.
yeah. Timing can make a huge difference. And you know, when we with Livemocha, for example, we did successfully raise a subsequent round, but we were not able to properly monetize our users in Brazil and other countries because payment systems didn't exist. Um, and so it was Duolingo who came much later than us that rode the mobile wave, and they were able to, by building a mobile app, they were able to take advantage of the payment system that Apple provided or Google provided, and so forth. So they were able to monetize much more effectively. Um, and so if we had been able to stay alive, uh, until that time, Duolingo would not have succeeded. We would have been the Duolingo today. But that's what sometimes you have to take the lumps as they come.
Yeah.
Yeah, timing is absolutely critical, and but doesn't necessarily mean that you are destined to be doomed. You can still find your way and still get acquired, or and provide a financial outcome for your employees, for your investors, and so forth.
That's really impressive what you did. You survived two
Yeah.
huge, like two of the biggest crashes, um, as of late. And secured a good exit.
Yeah.
Um, my last question in terms of Live Mocha was that I'll sort of provide some context around the question. Um, It's about people, any issues with users subverting the platform, either reselling the copied content or stuff like that. My thinking was that for this question was that I heard Greg Gottesman, who's the managing
Yeah.
director, yeah, at PSL, a venture fund and startup studio. He was the founder of Rover, which was
Yeah.
essentially marketplace app for pet sitting.
Yeah.
He spoke about how one of the big issues they had was that people were subverting their system and essentially meeting on platform but paying off platform.
Yeah.
And he had a really clever or not he had but he mentioned a really clever solution for it, which was essentially building into their algorithm, promoting people that would comply with the system and demoting people in the recommendations that would be subverting it. And so I was wondering if you ever faced any issues like this and how you tried to solve them.
Yeah. Going off platform for marketplaces is a big problem. Um, and so you have to be careful about the take rate, what percentage cut you take. And the more like Apple and Google charge 30%, and people have been upset with Apple for a very long time, and slowly it's being chipped away, and it'll rationalize to a more rational number. And then you have to think about strategies to encourage people to stay on the platform. I mean, we have um, used Rover ourselves for our dog, and we've stayed on platform because they provide insurance,
Hmm.
right? If I go off platform, then if something happens to my dog while it's with the dog sitter, then I run that risk. So there are clever ways to for a marketplace to entice people to stay on platform. The other thing is, of course, with Rover is reviews and so forth. That encourages the dog sitters to stay on platform because the more reviews, positive reviews they get, the more likely they are to show up in the search results and so forth. Yeah.
So in terms of Live Mocha, did you have any issues in the marketplace like this? Yeah, would people start subverting the platform, or did the freemium strategy, was that sufficient enough to keep people on platform?
We were not paying the native speakers, to provide. So they were providing free
Oh,
tutoring. So there was no, but ultimately, at some point, we wanted to have paid tutors on our platform. At which point, certainly, um, we'd have to be careful about the take rate, etc. Because you take one lesson through the platform, and then the subsequent lessons you pay the tutor directly, right?
mhm.
Um, a little more difficult, a little more challenging still challenging today to pay people outside the US. But that's going to be solved, it's at some point. Yeah, so it's you have to do all these things that I mentioned. Keep the take rate,
Mhm.
reasonable. Have reviews and all of those things to encourage people to consummate the transaction on the platform.
Awesome. I think Srinidhi wants to ask some questions regarding your authoring career.
Mhm.
Can you take it away?
Yeah. Yeah, so thank you, Uri. So writing winners takes all. Like, how did Livemocha, like, because Livemocha scaled to 15 million users,
Yeah.
right, before being acquired by Rosetta Stone. So, did you research the book before like that, or did you use the philosophies that you learned from Livemocha team on systems to write the book, like with the philosophies of like marketplace dangers and that kind of stuff?
Yeah. So I've been fascinated with marketplaces for a long time, because it's a winner take. If you can get through the chicken or egg problem, which is non-trivial to get through, then it's a flywheel that keeps spinning faster and faster and becomes a winner take all, a winner take most, situation. So I've been fascinated by marketplaces for a long time, and I learned a lot about it, with Limoca. But I had to do, a fair amount of research, and there's good blogs and articles that have been written about marketplaces that served as the foundation for the book.
You also recommended, this is from the book Startup to Exit. I think it was your first book, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you also recommended the founders like conduct 20 to 50 customer interviews before writing any code or like that kind of stuff. So how can a founder tell if a customer is like just being loud about a problem, like versus like actually having the budget to like, fix that problem?
Well, you first ask them, like, what are your top three problems, right? You don't tell them, here's a problem I'm solving, is this an important problem? And they'll say, yeah, but it's number 10 on their list, and they'll never get to it. All right. So you start by asking them, what are the top three things that keep you awake at night? And if the problem you're thinking about solving is not in the top three, then you pivot at that point and say, okay, tell me about these three problems. Why is it a problem? How are you addressing it? Is there a solution? Have you found a good solution for it, et cetera, et cetera? And that's how you conduct the interviews.
Okay. Yeah, so back to winner takes all, right?
Yeah.
So like you study giants like corporate giants like Amazon, Apple, Microsoft like that. So using their self-reference power, like self-marketing and that kind of stuff for their products, what is one specific regulation that you would like to implement today to level the playing field between big corporate businesses and small businesses? Like, what are some laws or regulations that you would like to see?
Yeah, there are a number of them, but you may have read in my book that how Amazon um, would basically undercut the pricing, the case of for example diapers, etc., and basically bring the other competitor to its knees and acquire them, etc. So stopping those kinds of practices, being very vigilant about what companies are being acquired and so forth. All those things are very important to prevent these monopolies from abusing their power.
Okay. And like in the recent time, actually staying on winners takes all. So like the evolution of marketplaces, right? From listing to manage to automated recommendations like Amazon uses right now based on your search history on their website. So if we reach a point where AI like plans and books an entire travel itinerary, I think it does it accurately now, but does the trust factor like shift away from the supplier like and entirely onto the platform's algorithm, like AI algorithm?
Yeah, I think agents. There's a company here in Seattle that a startup that was started by Madrona Venture Labs that are building agentic solutions for corporate travel. Um, they still have. I don't think agents have quite yet um, achieved their promise, but it's a matter of time. And ultimately, you will rely on them as opposed to going to Expedia to plan your corporate or personal travel. So it's a big opportunity to disrupt some of the existing players in the space using AI.
But do you think like the human factor will shift from like suppliers to AI, or will they like split between those two markets? Like, what's your opinion on that?
Yeah, I think supply. Yeah. As a supplier, you have to focus on really providing value and attractive price, etc. Um, and getting good reviews, all of those things that you traditionally have to do, but really the control is with the AI platform that's building its recommendation for your itinerary and so forth.
Okay. Yeah, in your most recent book, The Indian American Tech Success Story, do you think the success formula for Indian Americans in tech by looking at Satya Nadella, Sundar Pichai in Google and Microsoft, do you think the current 100K H-1B fee, like, will it do a permanent damage to the growth of AI in this phase? Because I know AIs are not growing, right? But like, will it drive talents to countries like Canada, England, like those kind of countries? So what do you think is gonna happen? Based,
I think, yeah, I think it's a real problem. As it is, a lot of in my time, 75% of my class would come to the United States, and for further studies and then ultimately work. Today, that percentage is much smaller. It's probably 25%, and it'll drive down to zero very soon. Nobody's going to pay $180,000 for an H-1B visa unless that person is a Stanford, MIT PhD or something.
Mhm.
They'll just hire them. Microsoft and Google, all these companies have um, um, in offices in China, India, Israel, etc. And they will just hire those engineers there, and they'll work from there. And you will not have a such, and they'll build. Ultimately, those people will go and build companies, great companies in their respective native countries, not in the United States. So it's a very short-sighted move on part of the administration to introduce those kinds of fees.
I'm currently reading The Indian American Tech Success Story. I
Mhm.
really like it. Like I'm halfway through the book right now, so I really like it.
That's
So
great.
yeah.
Interview. I
Mhm.
really appreciate your time. I want to close by asking you, is there anything that we should have asked you that we didn't?
No, I think the main thing I would say is that the most successful companies have been formed um, at the birth of some new platform, some new technology, some new market trend. Today, it's AI is that trend today, but tomorrow it could be AR, VR, who knows what, right? So be on the watch out for new technologies. Be the first to embrace those technologies, learn about those technologies, and be on the lookout for problems that you see out there in the world, and see if you can solve those problems more effectively with new technologies. And that's how I think great companies are really formed. So that's my kind of parting advice.
That's great advice.
Hmm.
All right. Thank you for your time. I recommend everyone to go and purchase and read Shirish's books.
Hmm.
I really appreciate you giving us the time to ask you some questions, and thank you.
All right. You're welcome, and good luck with your podcast.
Thank you so much.